Welcome to Showing Up Anyway, the podcast for people who are not perfect. On this show, we talk about intuitive eating, fitness without obsession, and healing your relationship with food and your body. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the show. I'm super happy to have you. I know I took last week off. I was on a little vacation. I appreciate your patience as we approach the end of the year. I might, miss a week from time to time, but if you stick around and make sure you're subscribed, I promise we'll always keep coming back. And today, I wanted to talk about something that really doesn't get nearly enough attention when it comes to food, and that includes for me. I don't talk about it as much as I do maybe hunger and fullness. We're going to be talking about satisfaction. I'm always asking you about hunger and fullness, right? It seems like every video I make, hunger and fullness, and honoring those and listening to them, which is incredibly important. But there's more to it. We can go a step further because you can be completely full and not satisfied. And I know you've experienced that before. Maybe you finished a meal and you decide you want dessert after. Or this happens a lot. Maybe you feel physically full, but you still find yourself like roaming the pantry or the kitchen for something a little bit more. It's because what you ate wasn't satisfying. It wasn't what you were looking for. So what we're going to talk about today is why satisfaction matters just as much as hunger and fullness, how diet culture has taught us to ignore it, and how bringing it back into your relationship with food can completely change the way that you eat. Something that I hear said all the time when it comes to food and nutrition is that food is fuel. Well, that's true. Food is a lot more than that too. Yeah, food gives you energy for sure, but it's also a social thing. It's a cultural thing. And in a lot of traditions and cultures, pleasure is considered a key part of healthy eating. For example, Japanese culture promotes enjoyment as one of the goals of healthy living. They understand that food is not just about nutrients, it's about the experience. But in our pursuit of health or weight loss, we forget one of the simplest joys of being human: the satisfaction that comes from eating. Now, the reason that this is so important is that if you regularly settle for food that does not satisfy you, you're really never going to feel fulfilled. You can fill up your stomach and still feel like you're missing something. That something, though, is satisfaction. Let me give you an example that I'm sure has happened to you, okay? You tell yourself, you know what sounds really good right now? An ice cream sandwich. But then you think, well, no, you know what? I shouldn't have that ice cream sandwich because it's got so much sugar. And I'm just going to have something a little healthier instead. I'm going to go grab a protein bar. So you finish that protein bar, but you know what? That did not quite do it for you. And so you still want a little something. So you go grab a handful of chocolate chips, okay? And that doesn't do it either. You're like, oh my God, what now? Like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to go and eat what I wanted. And now you've eaten the protein bar, a handful of chocolate chips, and the ice cream sandwich too. And it's not because you lack willpower. It's because you were not satisfied. So if satisfaction is so important, then why do a lot of us ignore it? Well, not surprisingly, a lot of it comes from diet culture and the way you were raised. Diet culture tells us that pleasure is a problem, that enjoying food is indulgent or it's cheating. If you think about the clean eating rules, if anybody's ever tried to eat clean, or if you've done a strict diet, you're good if you eat the salad and, with no dressing, but you're bad if you have the burger, right? You should have fruit for dessert instead of the ice cream, and you should definitely not have dessert twice in a day. Over time, rules like those train us to forget about satisfaction, to dismiss that. We start believing that what we want is wrong, it's weakness, and only what's on the approved list of whatever we deem to be healthy is acceptable. And so eating becomes a chore or a test of willpower rather than a source of joy. When I meet with new potential clients, one of the questions that I almost always ask is, do you feel guilty or ashamed when you eat? And a large percentage of people say yes, because diet culture has made shame and guilt a part of eating. We're taught to follow the rules and eat the right things and prioritize thinness or clean eating instead of enjoyment or satisfaction. Nothing tastes as good as skinny feels, right? Remember that? So as a result, we force ourselves to eat boring salads and rice cakes when what we really wanted was something else, something more. And that guilt is a really big problem, because if you do eat something that you enjoy, but you're consumed with guilt while you're eating it, you rob yourself of the satisfaction. You might even think you need to keep eating more to get that enjoyment that guilt chased away. Evelyn Tribble, who's one of the founders of intuitive eating, described it this way, and I'm paraphrasing, but she said that diet culture diminishes our quality of life by sucking the satisfaction out of eating. It makes it so that food is not just food anymore. It just becomes this minefield of anxieties and shoulds and should nots. And in that environment, who the hell is going to be able to be relaxed enough to feel satisfied? But here's the beautiful irony. When you start honoring satisfaction. It actually becomes easier to stop eating when you are starting to get comfortably full. It might sound a little counterintuitive. Some people think that if they start enjoying food too much, they're just never going to stop. But the opposite tends to happen. When you eat something that's really, really delicious and you do it mindfully, you're going to notice that as you continue to eat it and as you become more full, the enjoyment starts to become less and less. The meal doesn't taste as good as it did when you started. The peaks of pleasure start to drop off, and that's a clear sign that you've had enough. Now, this is a real physiological phenomenon, okay? You can look it up. It's called sensory specific satiety, okay? That's a mouthful. Sensory specific satiety, and I want to get into it a little bit more later, but basically, the more of a food that you eat, the less pleasurable each additional bite becomes. Studies have proven this. They've shown that the greatest pleasure from a particular food that you're eating comes within the first few bites or the first few minutes that you're eating. And as you continue, your taste buds literally become less sensitive to that flavor and the food just isn't hitting the same. It's your body's clever little way of saying, hey, you know what? We're good. We have had what we needed. And if you really start to pay attention to your senses, which I'm going to go over with you in this episode, you're going to notice when that wow factor starts to fade. Maybe that creamy pasta you were eating is not quite as mind-blowing on bite number 10 as it was on the first bite. That's a cue. Or maybe halfway through that pizza slice, you realize, hey, you know what? This is getting a little cold and I'm just kind of going through the motions. It's not lighting anything up like it once was. If you find yourself pushing the food around the plate with your fork, that's another. When you tune into those signals, stopping eating doesn't feel like a punishment. It feels natural. It feels like the right decision because you're not stopping because you're not allowed to have more. You're not stopping because the diet says you have to stop then. You're stopping because you are genuinely content. You've gotten what you came for, so to speak. This is why satisfaction is such a powerful tool for self-regulation. It helps you trust that you don't have to micromanage every single portion if you're truly listening. Your body and your taste buds will guide you if you are listening. The TLDR here, if I had to boil it down into a few words, is quality over quantity. Now, I'm pretty sure I did touch on my next point a little bit earlier. I just glanced over it, so I want to make this clear. It's entirely possible to be full without being satisfied. And that happens because being physically full is a biological feeling, but satisfaction is a psychological one, okay? Your body can be fed, but your taste buds and your mind might still be looking for something that's a little more enjoyable. Now, for those of you who are visual learners, well, I guess this isn't visual learning because one, for a lot of you, this is just audio. And for the rest of you who are watching the video, I don't have like a little graphic. I don't have a display board. So let me just describe it for you, okay? Satisfaction is like that big sigh at the end of a meal. The one that goes, oh my God, yeah, that hit the spot. Okay, if you don't get that, you might, not always, but you might experience something a little later, something I call the now what effect. You're full, but something's missing. So you rummage around the pantry or the fridge and think, now what? This is the biggest reason why you need to consider your satisfaction just as much as your hunger and fullness. It's not just something extra. It is a core signal from your body that your eating experience is complete. So what actually makes a meal satisfying? Because it's more than just the calories or the macros, okay? Eating really is a full sensory experience. So I'm going to guide you through what that looks like because a lot of you are not paying attention to these things at all. And that includes myself 5-10 years ago. There are at least 6 sensory things that come with every food that we're going to talk about today. There might be more, but we're going to talk about 6 of them. Taste, texture, aroma, temperature, appearance, and then the volume and sustaining capacity of a food. Now, I will warn you in advance, this might feel a little ASMR-like, okay? I promise I'm not going to be crumbling any foods on the microphone, but I'll also do my best to not use my book talk voice, but I don't know. We're going to see how that goes. I want you to think, this might feel a little romantic, okay? Food is sensual. What can I say? Think about a food that you really love. What does it taste like? Is it sweet, like a brownie or an orange? Is it savory, like a pasta with a rich tomato sauce? Is it salty, like a pickle? Maybe it's spicy or buttery or bitter, smoky, tart. Maybe it's bland, like a cottage cheese. What's the texture like? Is it creamy, smooth, silky like a yogurt? Is it crunchy like tortilla chips or crisp lettuce? Chewy like a bagel? Is it crumbly, flaky, sticky, soft, gooey? What about the temperature? Do you like a hot, hearty soup on a cold day or a cold smoothie on a hot afternoon? How about a cold bowl of fresh fruit, iced tea, hot coffee? Do you drink water chilled or do you drink it at room temperature? What's the aroma like? Do you like the smell of fresh baked bread or a sizzling garlic or onions? Do you like buttered popcorn or a smelly cheese or fresh coffee with cinnamon or vanilla? And obviously, the appearance matters too, what your meals look like. Are they all beige? Or do you like having some color on the plate? Maybe some purple beets or some green asparagus. Is your meal tall or is it flat like a quesadilla? What's the arrangement on the table or the plating? What does that look like? And lastly, we look at the volume and the sustaining capacity of food. And this is what you're going to feel in your stomach, okay? Are you eating something light like popcorn or hearty like a bean chili? Are you eating something heavy that's going to keep you full for a while like a mac and cheese? Or is it something like a yogurt that's not going to keep you full very long? All right, ASMR over. When was the last time that you thought about these things during your meal? And how do you think your meals and your eating experience would change if you were to think about these things more often? And so now that you know about them, the question that you need to start to ask yourself is, what do I want to eat right now? Would I be satisfied with something warm or cold? Crunchy or creamy? At first, this is going to feel a little bit unusual, maybe a little bit scary. Okay, what if I only want pizza and cookies forever? But I think what you're going to find is the opposite. When all foods are on the table, pun intended, and you pair that with the knowledge that all foods can fit in a healthy diet, and this is what I mean when I talk about giving yourself unconditional permission to eat all foods, you're going to start to crave balance. Sometimes it is going to be the burger, but sometimes it will be the salad. Both can be satisfying in different ways when you're allowed to choose. If you're used to food rules and guilt trips about food, asking yourself what sounds good right now is going to feel really strange, because a lot of people are so used to being told what they should have that they're completely out of touch with what they want to have. Let's change that, yeah? Think about your own upbringing and history with food. Growing up, did you have a say in how much or what you ate? Or was there a diet mentality in your house? Were you always told you had to finish your vegetables before you could have dessert? Or that some foods were bad? Think about the unspoken rules, or even the spoken rules that you internalized, like don't eat between meals, or always choose the low-fat option, or no second helpings, or dessert is only for special occasions. And with those childhood messages in mind, I want you to ask yourself gently, what do I want to eat right now? If no foods were off limits, and if no one was judging you, what would you choose right now? Now, I want to jump back because I did mention sensory-specific satiety. And we're going to talk about the role of variety in your life. Have you ever told yourself, oh my God, I'm so full, but I could really go for something sweet? Well, I hope so, because now I've used that example twice. But it's because that is a perfect example of how satisfaction works on a sensory level. You might be totally satisfied with what you're looking for on a salty or a savory level, but those sweet taste buds haven't yet been engaged. So the idea of ice cream still sounds pretty appealing. Now, variety can be a bit of a double-edged sword. On one hand, including a lot of different flavors and textures in a meal can make that meal more satisfying overall because you're hitting a lot of sensory buttons. You can include a lot in one meal. You might have something savory, something fresh, something acidic, something crunchy, something creamy, and that might leave you feeling really content because you got, all your senses got a little bit of play. But on the other hand, endless variety in one sitting, like going to a all-you-can-eat buffet or something with dozens and dozens of options, can lead us to eat past our fullness because every new taste rekindles that interest. And if we keep switching those new flavors, we postpone that I'm done feeling. So how do we use all this knowledge to our advantage? Well, the first thing is you've got to notice it. The next time you're eating a meal, pay attention to the first few bites. Savor them. Really notice how delicious they are, okay? And then also notice as the intensity starts to decline. You can use it in tandem with some of your fullness cues. And you might realize, hey, you know what? I'm not thinking about food as much anymore. And also what I'm eating doesn't taste as good anymore. I think maybe I've reached a place where I can comfortably stop. But if you decide to have a second course or a dessert, I want you to notice how your enthusiasm might perk up again for that new flavor. None of this is good or bad. It's just information about how your body works. So just be aware of it so that you can recognize when one particular craving has been satisfied and also recognize when you're actually craving something else versus just eating out of habit. If you can recognize when the pleasure from each bite is starting to drop, you can pause and check in with yourself. Am I getting full? Would I actually like another serving, or am I just eating because it's there? This is something called the last bite threshold. You're asking yourself, is the next bite going to be my last bite? And you're answering that question using all the tools we've accumulated so far and making a judgment based on that to either continue and have another bite and then ask yourself that same question, is the next bite going to be my last bite? Or if you decide, yes, this is my last bite, you can comfortably stop there. Congratulations, you've done it. Now, thinking about satisfaction and how to use it as a tool, as information about how to eat better might sound a little bit weird, okay? But it really is. It's learning to trust yourself to take care of your body. When you make satisfaction a priority, you are essentially telling yourself, my needs and desires matter. I trust that I know what I want, that I'm feeding myself something good and something enjoyable. What's a better form of self-care and self-trust than that? Instead of viewing your love for tasty food as the enemy, you're starting to see it as an ally, as a signal that can guide you towards what your body wants and what your mind really needs. Now, I know that trusting yourself around food feels scary at first. Okay, I get it, especially if you've spent years and years feeling out of control and ashamed, but it's like strengthening a muscle or developing a new skill, okay? You need to start with one meal or one snack at a time. Nobody was born buff. Nobody was born speaking 3 languages. Nobody was born with the ability to play 10 different instruments. You've got to start somewhere. All those things take practice. You might have to experiment a little bit to kind of figure out what you really like and what you really want. That's okay. Don't treat it like a test. Treat it like a curious adventure, okay? And if you feel ready, maybe you want to try and reintroduce some of the foods that you've made off limits before. I know people who have never had pasta in the last 10 years, okay? If you've avoided that food, make a small bowl of it, of your favorite kind, and pay attention to all the senses that we talked about earlier, okay? You could do the same thing for your favorite chocolate chip cookie. When you allow yourself to eat foods you actually like, you're going to feel a lot more satisfied and content afterwards. Imagine that. And then you can move on with your day instead of having this nagging feeling of deprivation all the time. Each time that you listen to your body's wants and it ends well, you are rebuilding trust in yourself. You're proving to yourself, I can enjoy this food without going off the rails. I can stop when I'm satisfied. I can be healthy and I can be happy too. But keep in mind that making satisfaction a priority does not mean that you're always going to have the perfect meal or that you're never going to overeat again, okay? You're human. It's going to happen. And sometimes you're going to eat past your fullness, and sometimes you're going to grab something quick that's not your top choice. That's okay. What it means is that you are approaching eating from a place of self-respect and not a place of self-punishment. I want you to notice that when I tell you to introduce a variety of foods and maybe reintroduce some foods back into your life, I'm not telling you to do it in a way that's reckless. Okay? I'm not telling you to eat the whole box of Oreos at once. We're doing this responsibly. We're doing it mindfully. Very demure. Oh man, that reference is a little outdated. A healthy relationship with food is about nourishing all of you, body and mind. Pleasure and nutrition can absolutely sit at the same table. In fact, the more you allow yourself to find pleasure in balanced meals, the more sustainable healthy eating becomes. Who do you think is going to be more consistent in their diet? The person that is choking down dry chicken and raw kale because they think that's the healthy thing, or the person who finds delicious ways to prepare their veggies with sauces and spices they love and who savors the small dessert each night without guilt? Now, if you're still feeling a little bit unsure or skeptical or a little bit afraid, that's okay. I want you to start just by noticing your eating experiences without immediately judging them. Okay, maybe over the next few days, ask yourself occasionally, am I enjoying this? What would make this meal more satisfying for me? It might be as simple as heating up your lunch instead of eating it cold, or adding a little bit of salt or pepper, or sitting down at a table instead of standing over the counter. Little acts of honoring satisfaction can slowly rebuild your trust in yourself. And remember, there's no perfect way to do this, okay? Some days you're going to nail it and feel like, wow, I really listened and that meal was exactly what I needed. And other days you're going to feel like, you know what? That did not actually satisfy me. And I just kept looking for snacks and now I realize why. Rather than scolding yourself, if that happens, I want you to get curious. Ask yourself, what was I really wanting there? And how could I give that to myself next time? Every experience, even the ones that you label as mistakes, is useful information for guiding yourself towards what works for you. And this is why during my group coaching calls with my clients, I don't ask them about wins and losses. I ask them about wins and lessons learned. What did you learn this week, and how can we use that to our advantage next week? And since we're on that topic, if you like what I'm talking about and you want a little bit of help incorporating it into your life, I do offer one-on-one coaching, and the link to apply for that is in my show notes. I would love to help you. If you apply, I will reach back out to you once you submit that application, and we'll find a time either this week or next week, where we can meet one-on-one and we'll talk about that. No pressure, no obligation, totally free. But if you've ever been curious about what training might look like, I'll talk to you about it. All right, now here is my challenge for all of you, for everybody that's listening. I want you at your very next meal, maybe that's breakfast, maybe that's lunch, maybe that's dinner, because those are the only three options. Okay. I want you to pause and I want you to ask yourself, before you choose your meal, what would actually satisfy me right now? And then I want you to give yourself permission to honor it. Okay. Because the goal is not to eat perfectly. The goal is to live fully, and satisfaction is what makes that possible. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Showing Up Anyway. You can find it for free on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And wherever you're listening, if you like the show, I'd love it if you gave me a 5-star review, because that does help other people find the show, and hopefully it'll help change their life just like you're looking to change yours. If you're listening on Spotify, though, you can follow me and tap the bell icon so you get notifications when new episodes come out. I'm Coach Adam. Remember, when things get challenging, keep showing up